The HOA president didn't just send angry letters. She tried to destroy my sister's life-saving medical device before her heart surgery. When the doctor discovered what happened, he immediately called the police. What she did next shocked everyone. This is the story of betrayal, survival, and justice that will break your heart and restore your faith in humanity. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was sitting at my desk at work, working on a project presentation, trying to focus on spreadsheets and timelines. My phone buzzed on my desk, and Sarah's name appeared on the screen. Something in my gut told me this wasn't a casual call about dinner plans or weekend hangouts. My sister's voice was shaking when she told me the news that would shatter both our worlds. "Marcus, I have a severe heart condition. The doctors are saying I need surgery soon. I'm scared." Sarah was only 28 years old, in the prime of her life. She worked as a nurse at County Hospital, one of the best hospitals in the state. She spent her days caring for others, bringing comfort to scared patients, holding their hands through the darkest moments of their lives. She was the kind of person the world desperately needed: kind, compassionate, strong, someone who saw people not as problems but as human beings deserving of care and dignity. Now, suddenly, she needed someone to take care of her. When I hung up the phone and called the hospital, getting Dr. James Mitchell on the line, my world collapsed into pieces. "Your sister has a severe cardiac condition," Dr. Mitchell explained, his voice calm but serious, the voice of a man who had delivered this news 1,000 times before. "Her heart valve is severely damaged. The tissue surrounding the valve has deteriorated. Her heart isn't pumping blood efficiently. She's experiencing irregular heartbeats. If we don't operate, her condition will deteriorate rapidly. She could have a cardiac event, a heart attack, at any time. It could happen while she's sleeping, while she's working, while she's standing in the grocery store. Without surgery, we're looking at a very grim prognosis." I asked the question I was terrified to ask, the question that kept me awake at night for years afterward: will she survive the surgery? "I've performed this operation hundreds of times," Dr. Mitchell said firmly. "I've been a cardiac surgeon for 20 years. Your sister is young, and aside from this condition, she's otherwise healthy. That's in her favor. Her recovery will be strong. But I won't lie to you, open heart surgery is always serious. There are always risks. But I believe I can fix her heart. I believe I can give her life back. But we need to do this soon. Within 3 weeks. Her condition is deteriorating. 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to prepare my sister for the fight of her life. 3 weeks to be strong for her while my own world was falling apart. 3 weeks to make sure she knew she wasn't alone. I did what I always do in a crisis. I showed up. That afternoon, I walked into my boss's office and told him I was taking an indefinite leave of absence. I didn't wait for his response or his arguments. I called my landlord and told him I was breaking my lease early. I packed a bag with clothes and books and everything I thought I might need. By that evening, I was at Sarah's house in Meadowbrook Heights, moving into her guest bedroom, ready to be whatever she needed me to be. Our mother had died 5 years ago from complications of diabetes. I had been there for every single hospital visit, every difficult moment, every time she was scared or in pain. I had learned what it meant to be strong for someone you love, to set aside your own fear and become the rock they need to lean on. I had learned that sometimes loving someone means showing up, being present, and refusing to leave even when everything feels hopeless. Now I would do the same for my sister. Sarah held me when I arrived, and we both cried. She was terrified. I was terrified. But we had each other, and that would have to be enough. Sarah lived in Meadowbrook Heights, a quiet suburban neighborhood about 30 minutes from the hospital. She had bought her little 3-bedroom house 2 years ago with her own money, saving carefully from her nursing salary, dreaming of a place that was truly hers. It was supposed to be her sanctuary, her dream home, a place of peace and safety where she could build the life she wanted. The backyard had a beautiful old oak tree that had been there for decades, and Sarah loved to sit under it in the evenings with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. She had painted her front door a cheerful bright blue because it made her happy every time she came home. She had planted a garden with roses and wildflowers and herbs. It was perfect. It was hers. It was everything she had dreamed of. But her peace was shattered by one woman, Patricia Henderson, the HOA president. Everyone called her Karen behind her back, sometimes to her face when they were angry enough. Patricia had been making Sarah's life miserable from the moment Sarah moved in. Patricia was the type of woman who measured grass blades with a ruler to make sure they were exactly the right height. She was the type of woman who sent formal letters about flowers being 1 inch too tall, about cars parked on the street for too long, about mailboxes that were slightly crooked. She lived in the biggest house on the street, a sprawling mansion with iron gates and marble columns and a perfectly manicured lawn that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread about wealthy suburbs. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly mortgage payment. She had a smile that could freeze a room, a laugh that sounded like breaking ice, and a way of making people feel small just by looking at them. The first notice came within 2 weeks of Sarah moving in. Her roses were too tall, they violated Section 3, Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws. The second notice came a month later, her front door was not an approved color and needed to be repainted. The third notice complained about Sarah's best friend Jessica's car being parked on the street too often and looking unsightly. Each notice was typed formally on official HOA letterhead, printed on expensive paper, signed in bold calligraphy by Patricia Henderson, HOA president. Each one felt like a deliberate attack, a message that Sarah wasn't welcome here, that she didn't belong. Over the next 2 years, Patricia sent notice after notice after notice. About flowers. About the mailbox being slightly crooked. About a potted plant on the porch that was aesthetically inappropriate. About trash cans left out 1 day too long. About the color of her shutters. About the height of her hedges. About the neighborhood not being welcoming to Jessica's visits anymore. Each letter was formal, threatening, designed to make Sarah feel small and unwelcome in her own home. I later learned that Patricia did this to everyone in the neighborhood. There was a man 3 streets over whose roses she had complained about constantly. He'd eventually had a heart attack from the stress and moved away. There was an elderly woman who had received so many notices that she eventually sold her house and moved away, unable to take the constant harassment anymore. There were families with children who had been told their children's toys violated neighborhood code and had to be stored away every single night. Patricia had made it her mission to control this entire neighborhood through fear and intimidation. She seemed to need someone to torment, the way some people need oxygen to breathe. Sarah had learned to ignore most of the notices over the 2 years. She focused on her work, on helping people at the hospital, on being kind and compassionate to everyone around her. But ignoring Patricia was becoming increasingly impossible as Patricia's obsession with control grew more intense. When Sarah received her diagnosis from Dr. Mitchell, medical equipment started arriving at her house over the course of a few days. A heart monitor device that she needed to wear constantly, small pads attached to her chest with sticky adhesive, connected by wires to a larger monitor unit that tracked every single heartbeat 24 hours a day. An oxygen tank for when her breathing became labored. Blood pressure monitoring equipment so she could track her vital signs. Medications in various bottles and packages. All of it was absolutely life-saving, prescribed by Dr. Mitchell after careful examination and testing, absolutely necessary for her survival until the surgery could be performed. The heart monitor especially was critical, essential, non-negotiable. It was monitoring her condition every single moment of every single day, tracking every irregular beat, recording data that would be crucial for Dr. Mitchell to have before performing the surgery. Without the monitor, Dr. Mitchell wouldn't have the baseline information he needed to make the surgery as safe as possible. But when Patricia saw the equipment sitting in Sarah's driveway and visible from the street, she didn't see Sarah's lifeline. She didn't see the medical necessity or the desperate need. She saw only a violation of neighborhood aesthetics. She saw something that didn't fit her perfect vision of the perfect neighborhood. She saw an opportunity. The first HOA notice arrived just 3 days after the equipment. It was the coldest, most threatening notice yet. Patricia wrote that the unsightly medical devices, visible from the street, were a direct violation of Section 4, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws regarding the appearance and maintenance of properties. She demanded that Sarah remove all visible equipment within 48 hours or face legal action. The language was harsh, threatening, calculated to intimidate and frighten. It was designed to make Sarah comply through fear. I showed Patricia a detailed letter from Dr. Mitchell explaining the critical medical necessity of every single device. I explained carefully that Sarah had a severe and life-threatening heart condition and that she needed this equipment to stay alive until her surgery could be performed. I tried to make her understand that this wasn't about aesthetics, this was about survival. Patricia read the letter with visible disdain, as if what Dr. Mitchell had written meant nothing to her. "Rules are rules," she said coldly, her voice cutting like ice. Perhaps the equipment could be moved to the basement where it wouldn't be visible. The heart monitor needs to be accessible to her at all times, I explained, trying hard to remain calm despite my growing fury. If she has a cardiac event, if her heart starts failing, she needs to be able to reach it in seconds. She needs to be able to call for help immediately. Moving it to the basement could literally cost her her life. "That's really not my problem," Patricia replied dismissively, and then she closed the door in my face. Over the next 5 days, 4 more notices arrived at Sarah's house. Each one was more threatening than the last. Lawyers' language appeared in the formal notices. Words like legal proceedings and breach of contract and forced removal appeared throughout the documents. Patricia was escalating, increasing the pressure, making it clear that she was not going to stop. She was not going to back down. She was not going to show any compassion or understanding for Sarah's medical situation. The stress was systematically destroying my sister. Her anxiety was through the roof, at levels that were dangerous for someone in her precarious health condition. Her heart condition was getting worse from the constant worry and fear. She couldn't sleep at night. Her heart was skipping beats. The surgery was supposed to happen in just 4 days. She was supposed to be calm, centered, mentally and physically prepared. Instead, she was falling apart, her body and mind both deteriorating under the relentless pressure. 3 days before the scheduled surgery, everything came to a head in a moment that would change all our lives forever. I had gone to the pharmacy to pick up Sarah's pre-surgery medications. Dr. Mitchell had given her a specific list of things she needed to take before the operation: supplements to strengthen her body, medications to stabilize her heart, things that would help prepare her for the stress of surgery. Sarah was home alone, resting at home as the doctor had instructed. She was wearing her heart monitor, the small device attached to her chest, the device that was keeping her alive by tracking every single heartbeat, every irregularity, every dangerous moment. It was her lifeline, the most important thing she owned. She was sitting in the backyard under the oak tree, trying to find just a moment of peace in the chaos of her life. The late afternoon sun was warm on her face. For just a moment, she wasn't a sick woman awaiting life or death surgery. She was just Sarah, sitting under a tree on a beautiful day, listening to the birds sing. That's when she saw Patricia. Patricia was in the yard with a young man, someone Sarah recognized as working for Patricia's professional landscaping company. Sarah watched in confusion as Patricia pointed at the heart monitor equipment that sat inside the open sliding glass door, clearly visible from the yard. The monitor was a large machine with a screen and wires and lights. It was essential equipment, the device that was saving her life, keeping her alive moment by moment. Sarah's instinct kicked in immediately, that internal alarm system that had saved countless patients during her nursing career. Something felt dangerously wrong. Very wrong. It was like the moment before an accident, when time seems to slow down and every sense becomes heightened and aware. Sarah had felt this instinct many times in her work as a nurse, the moments when she noticed something was off with a patient before any test or monitor confirmed it. She had learned to trust her gut completely, to listen to the voice inside that screamed warning even when she couldn't quite explain why. Patricia smiled at the young man. She said something that Sarah couldn't hear clearly from under the tree, but her voice was smooth, confident, persuasive. Then Patricia gestured inside the house, toward the heart monitor equipment. She was clearly giving him explicit instructions about what to do. Sarah watched as the young man began walking toward the house, toward the equipment that was keeping her alive. Every instinct in Sarah's body screamed a warning that was almost physical. Something was terribly, dangerously wrong. Patricia was trying to do something to the equipment. She stood up, her legs unsteady from her heart condition and the constant stress, and hurried inside as fast as she could move. Her heart was already racing, making every sudden movement potentially dangerous. But she pushed through the pain and fear anyway. She arrived just as the young man was reaching out toward the heart monitor device. His hand was just inches away from it. "Stop!" Sarah screamed, her voice sharp and commanding. "Don't touch that." The young man jumped back, startled. His hand snapped away from the equipment as if it had burned him. He looked confused, almost embarrassed, unsure what was happening. He looked toward Patricia, seeking guidance, seeking an explanation for why this woman was yelling at him. Patricia was still standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable, carefully controlled. For just a moment, Sarah saw something dark flash across her face. Something cold and calculating and cruel. Something that revealed the true nature of what Patricia had been trying to do. Then the mask came back, the practiced smile, the smooth facade. "I was just going to move the equipment to the basement," Patricia said smoothly, her voice like silk covering broken glass. "So it would be out of sight. I thought I was helping you, Sarah. I was trying to find a compromise." But Sarah wasn't fooled. Her nurse's intuition, honed by years of experience, screamed that this was a lie. Patricia hadn't been trying to help. She had been trying to get that equipment moved, possibly to damage it, possibly to disable it permanently. Patricia had deliberately arranged for someone else to do her dirty work so she could claim ignorance if caught, so she could deny everything. Sarah's hands were shaking. Her heart was racing dangerously fast, far faster than was safe for someone in her condition. She could feel the irregular beating in her chest, feel the skipped beats, feel the fear flooding through her veins like ice water. This woman she lived near, this woman who had been making her life difficult with notices and complaints, had almost gotten her to disable the one thing keeping her alive. "Do not touch my medical equipment," Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage and fear. "Ever. This equipment is keeping me alive. My doctor prescribed it. It's saving my life. And if anything happens to it, if it gets damaged or disabled, I could die. Do you understand? I could have a cardiac event right here in my house. Without this monitor, no one would know what's happening. I could collapse and die alone." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, her entire body shaking. "Get out of my house," she said firmly. "Get out right now, or I'm calling the police. I mean it. Leave immediately." Patricia left, but the damage was already done. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept checking the heart monitor, watching her irregular heartbeats displayed on the screen. The stress had triggered episodes of dangerous arrhythmia. Her heart was acting erratically, skipping beats, racing at dangerous speeds. The surgery was in just 2 days. She was supposed to be calm and prepared. Instead, she was terrified and traumatized by what Patricia had almost done. When I came home and found her in tears, telling me everything that had happened, telling me about Patricia's attempt to sabotage her medical equipment, I felt rage unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. But I didn't lose control. Instead, I did what needed to be done. I called Dr. Mitchell immediately and told him everything. "That's a crime," Dr. Mitchell said, his voice cold and professional but filled with underlying fury. Tampering with medical equipment is tampering with life support devices. This is very serious. I'm calling the police right now. I'm going to make sure this woman faces criminal charges. The police arrived the next morning. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both looking serious and professional. They took detailed statements from Sarah, reviewed all of the medical equipment, photographed everything, documented everything. They went to Patricia's house and questioned her. But the real breakthrough came when they reviewed security footage from a neighbor's camera. Mr. Patterson, who lived 2 houses down, had security cameras on his property. He had installed them years earlier after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood. The cameras were always recording, capturing everything that happened on the street. When the police reviewed the footage from the day of the incident, they found exactly what they needed: clear, undeniable evidence of Patricia's crime. The video showed Patricia clearly pointing at Sarah's heart monitor equipment through the open sliding glass door. It showed her gesturing to the young man with animated hand movements. It showed her speaking to him with a cold, calculated expression. The audio wasn't perfectly clear on the recording, but the intent was unmistakable and obvious. Patricia was deliberately directing someone to move or potentially damage Sarah's medical equipment. She was trying to do it through someone else to maintain plausible deniability. The young man came forward immediately and confirmed everything. He said Patricia had told him that the medical equipment was a violation of neighborhood codes and needed to be moved to the basement. He had no idea it was life support equipment. He had no idea he was being asked to participate in a crime. He felt terrible and cooperated fully with the police. Dr. Mitchell provided a formal statement to the police, explaining with clinical precision and obvious anger exactly what would have happened if the heart monitor had been disabled or damaged. Without the monitor, we wouldn't have had the baseline data we need for the surgery, he explained to the police officers. We couldn't track her condition properly. Disabling it could have resulted in her having a cardiac event without proper medical response. It could have resulted in her death. This is not a minor violation. This is attempted murder. Patricia Henderson was arrested and charged with tampering with medical equipment and reckless endangerment. The bail was set at $20,000. Her husband, humiliated and furious, paid it within hours. But Patricia's life as she knew it was over. The case moved quickly through the legal system. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Security footage showing her intent. Police testimony. Dr. Mitchell's expert witness statement. The young man's statement. The pattern of harassment documented in months of HOA notices. There was no defense. There was only the truth. 3 months after Sarah's successful heart surgery, Patricia Henderson was convicted. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison for tampering with medical equipment and reckless endangerment. She was ordered to pay significant restitution to Sarah for her medical bills and emotional suffering. The neighborhood removed her as HOA president and completely rewrote the entire HOA bylaws. But the real victory was Sarah. Her surgery was successful. Dr. Mitchell replaced her damaged valve and repaired her heart tissue. The recovery was long and hard, with complications along the way, an infection that required strong antibiotics, nights when the monitors alarmed and nurses rushed in. But Sarah fought through it all. Slowly, day by day, her heart grew stronger. She grew stronger in body and spirit. 6 months after her surgery, Sarah returned to work at the hospital, not as a victim but as a survivor. She started a support group for cardiac patients. She gave talks about trusting your instincts. She spoke to people about standing up to those who try to hurt you. She spoke about the importance of protecting your peace when you're fighting for your life. Years later, Sarah met David, a kind teacher who saw her not as a victim but as the strongest person he had ever met. They married under the oak tree in her backyard. I walked her down the aisle, tears streaming down my face. Dr. Mitchell gave a toast that made everyone cry. Mr. Patterson was honored as a guest. On the 20th anniversary of her surgery, Sarah stood under that oak tree with her family. The sun was warm on her face, just like it had been that day when everything changed. She had survived the disease. She had survived the cruelty. She had refused to be broken. Her heart beat strong and steady. Every beat was a victory. Every breath was a miracle. The story of what Patricia had done, and the justice that followed, spread throughout Meadowbrook Heights like wildfire. Neighbors who had been silently suffering under Patricia's tyranny finally spoke up. The man whose roses she had complained about shared his story. The elderly woman who had moved away contacted the local news. Families with children talked about the constant harassment they had endured. The neighborhood realized they had been living under the control of a woman who used fear and intimidation as weapons. The HOA completely transformed after Patricia's conviction. New bylaws were written that focused on genuine community safety rather than arbitrary aesthetic control. The new board removed provisions that had allowed one person to enforce vague rules however they wanted. They added a mandatory cooling-off period before complaints could be filed. They required that all notices be reviewed by an independent board member before being sent to homeowners. The old HOA that had been a tool of tyranny was reborn as a genuine community organization that actually served people. Gardens bloomed with wild colors again. Children's toys appeared in yards without fear of complaints. People painted their doors whatever colors made them happy. Flowers grew to whatever height they pleased. The neighborhood transformed from a place of fear and control into a place of peace and acceptance. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. It was alive. Sarah started receiving letters from people she didn't know. Nurses who had read about her story and felt inspired by her courage. Cancer patients who had faced their own battles with illness and cruelty. Heart patients who were scared and needed to know that it was possible to survive, to thrive, to come out on the other side not just alive but grateful for life. A woman in New York sent her a photo of Sarah's story pinned on her hospital room wall. A support group in Texas invited her to speak via video call about her experience and recovery. Her story became a testimony to the power of human resilience and the importance of trusting your instincts. David and Sarah had 2 beautiful children. Their son James was named after Dr. Mitchell, the man who had saved Sarah's life. Their daughter was named Hope, because that's what Sarah's story represented to everyone who knew about it. James and Hope grew up hearing their mother's story, understanding from a young age that life was precious and fragile, that kindness mattered deeply, that standing up for what was right was always worth it, even when it was difficult. Sarah continued her work at the hospital for 25 years. She didn't just do her nursing job, she became known throughout the entire region as a beacon of hope for people facing heart disease. Patients would specifically request her. Families would ask that she be part of their loved one's care team. She had a gift for making scared people feel safe, just as she had before her own diagnosis. But now she brought something more, personal understanding, lived experience, proof that the other side of surgery and recovery was worth fighting for. She had been where they were. She had been terrified. She had survived. Marcus never married, choosing instead to dedicate himself to his career and to being present for his sister and her family. He was a devoted uncle to James and Hope. On holidays, the 3 of them, Marcus, Sarah, and David, would sit together in the backyard under that same oak tree, and Marcus would tell stories about their childhood, about their mother, about the day Sarah got her diagnosis, about how scared he had been. The children would listen, rapt, understanding that their mother's survival was a kind of miracle, understanding that their uncle had been the rock that held everything together during the scariest time. Dr. Mitchell retired when Sarah was 40 years old. Before his retirement, Sarah threw him a huge party at the hospital. She invited every single cardiac patient he had ever saved, every person whose life he had touched during his career as a surgeon. There were over 100 people there, all of them alive because of his skill and his dedication and his refusal to give up on his patients. When Dr. Mitchell saw them all gathered, tears streamed down his weathered face. He told Sarah that she had given him the greatest gift of his life, proof that his work mattered, that the hours he spent perfecting his craft had resulted in people living, thriving, loving, having families, building lives. Sarah hugged him and whispered, "You saved my life. You gave me everything." Patricia Henderson never reached out to Sarah again after that single letter years before. Sarah heard through the grapevine that Patricia had been released from prison after serving her full sentence. She had moved to a small quiet town upstate, away from Meadowbrook Heights. She had started over, become a quieter, humbler person. Sarah occasionally thought about her and wished her well. She didn't hate her anymore. Hatred was a poison that only hurt the person who carried it. Sarah had learned that holding on to anger only hurt yourself, and she had already suffered enough. She had learned forgiveness not because Patricia deserved it, but because Sarah deserved to be free. Mr. Patterson, the neighbor whose security camera had captured the truth that saved Sarah's life, became like a grandfather to Sarah's children. He told them the story of how his cameras had caught Patricia trying to hurt their mother. He became part of their family, attending every birthday party, every school graduation, every important moment. James and Hope called him Grandpa Patterson. He was at Sarah's wedding under the oak tree, crying happy tears as he watched her marry David. Years passed. Sarah's support group helped hundreds of cardiac patients. Her talks at hospitals and health conferences inspired thousands of people. She wrote articles about the connection between stress and heart health. She became an advocate for patients' rights, making sure that people undergoing medical crises were protected from harassment and abuse. She worked with lawyers to create legal frameworks that would protect vulnerable patients from people like Patricia. On the 25th anniversary of her surgery, Sarah stood under the oak tree and reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the disease that had tried to kill her from the inside. She thought about the cruelty that had tried to destroy her from the outside. She thought about the moment when she trusted her instinct and saved her own life. She thought about Dr. Mitchell's steady hands and confident voice. She thought about Marcus's unwavering support. She thought about David's love. She thought about her beautiful children and the life she had built. She thought about justice and forgiveness. She thought about how close she had come to death, not once but twice, once from her failing heart, and once from Patricia's deliberate attempt to sabotage her medical equipment. She thought about how different her life would have been if she hadn't trusted her instinct that day under the oak tree. She thought about all the other people Patricia could have hurt if she hadn't been stopped. Most of all, she thought about hope. She thought about how in the darkest moments of her life, when everything seemed impossible, when a woman she had never harmed was actively trying to destroy her, she had chosen to keep fighting. She had chosen to survive. She had chosen to thrive. She had chosen love and hope and life. Her heart beat strong and true, just as Dr. Mitchell had promised all those years ago. Every single beat was a victory. Every single breath was a gift. Every single day was a celebration of the precious, fragile, beautiful gift of life itself. Patricia had tried to stop Sarah's heart operation. But she had failed. Dr. Mitchell had called the police. Justice had been served. And Sarah? Sarah had survived. Sarah had thrived. Sarah had won. More than that, she had used her experience to help others, to inspire others, to make the world a better place. She had transformed her pain into purpose. She had turned her trauma into triumph. And every morning when Sarah woke up, felt her heart beating in her chest, and took a breath, she was grateful. Grateful for life. Grateful for her family. Grateful for the people who had stood by her. Grateful for her own strength and resilience. Grateful for the second chance that Dr. Mitchell had given her. Grateful for the opportunity to live, to love, to make a difference in the world.